Jake and Emma were both desperate for a break. Between their demanding jobs and constant screen time, the digital noise never stopped. So when they found a remote campground deep in the mountains, a place with no cell signal, no Wi-Fi, just pure nature, they jumped at the chance. They arrived mid-afternoon, sunlight filtering through towering pines as they parked their car on a gravel lot. The air smelled of pine needles and fresh earth. No buzzing phones, no notifications, just the quiet rustle of the forest. Setting up camp near a clear, babbling stream, Jake unpacked the handheld GPS device he insisted on bringing along. It had been a gift from his brother and worked perfectly during their hike-in. The small screen showed their exact location, elevation, and the trail winding ahead. The first day passed like a dream. They hiked, cooked over an open fire, and talked without distraction. Emma marveled at the stars, so bright they felt almost surreal. On the second afternoon, they planned a short hike to a nearby ridge to enjoy watching the sunset. Jake checked the GPS battery. It was nearly full. "Should be no problem," he said confidently. But halfway along the trail, the device blinked "low battery," then died abruptly. "I forgot to charge the spares," Jake admitted, shaking his head. Emma sighed but smiled. "We've got a map, right, and the trail markers." They pressed on. The forest grew thicker, the canopy above blotting out the sun. The trail became less defined. Subtle markers were easy to miss, especially as tiredness set in. At one fork, they debated which way to go, then picked the left path. The underbrush grew tangled, and soon the trail was gone. They tried to retrace their steps, but the trees looked unfamiliar. The ground underfoot was soft, scattered with fallen leaves and pine cones, not matching where they'd just walked. Panic began to gnaw at the edges of their calm. They walked on, hoping to find a clearing or the main trail. The sun sank low. The temperature dropped sharply. Emma's fingers turned numb. They argued quietly. Jake wanted to stay put until morning. Emma, growing restless and scared, urged they keep moving. Eventually, exhaustion won out. They found a dense patch of fir trees, crouched together for warmth, and waited for dawn. In the long, cold hours, Emma thought she heard faint buzzing, but her phone was dead. Jake's phone was the same. They were truly off the grid. Morning light spilled through the trees. They rose stiff and cold, shaking off the night. Determined, they pushed forward, hoping to find the gravel road or any sign of their campsite. Hours later, through a break in the trees, they spotted a clearing. And there, parked exactly where they'd left it, was their car. Relief overwhelmed them. It hadn't been stolen. They hadn't been lost forever. They had simply wandered off trail, disoriented and fearful, convinced the worst. Jake slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, the familiar hum a lifeline reconnecting them to safety. Emma smiled tiredly. "This trip, it tested us," she said. Jake nodded. "Next time, we'll be better prepared. Charged devices, better maps, more focus." They shared a quiet laugh, the weight of the ordeal finally easing. Nature was beautiful, yes, but it demanded respect, attention, and humility. And now, they knew exactly that. Philip wasn't an expert camper, but he knew his way around the basics. A few times a year, when things in life started to crowd his head, he'd pick a trail, pack light, and disappear for a weekend. Not to conquer nature or escape anything dramatic, just to be still, alone, without the constant pinging of the outside world. This trip was one of those. Early fall, not too cold yet, and he'd found an old trail from a half-dead hiking forum. No real traffic, no service. Perfect. He parked behind a rusted forestry gate and hiked in about 5 miles before setting up camp near a dry creek bed. The land was burned out years ago, trees still blackened, the ground soft and sooty, but it felt calm. Quiet. That first night, he cooked some pasta over his tiny stove, zipped up in his tent by 9 and fell asleep to the wind sliding over the ridge. By mid-morning, while collecting kindling, he noticed a thin column of smoke rising behind a patch of trees to the north. Another camper. Closer than expected for how remote this spot was. Curious but not concerned, Philip walked far enough to spot a tarp between 2 charred trunks. Beige, simple, but no movement. No fire crackling, no gear spread out, just smoke curling up from the fire ring. He called out once. No response. Figured they were sleeping or gone for a walk. He left it alone. That night, he saw their firelight glowing faintly through the trees. Still no sound, no laughter, no footsteps. Just a steady orange flicker and the usual forest hush. The next morning, his water filter bag was missing. Philip checked everywhere. Around his fire pit, under the tent, even downstream in case it rolled. Nothing. He hadn't heard animals in the night, and nothing else was disturbed. He still had 2 full bottles, so he rationed and shrugged it off. Later that day, after returning from a short hike, he found his tent flap unzipped. Nothing was missing, but his stuff had been moved. The protein bar he kept at the top of his pack was gone. His socks were on the ground. The bag felt like someone had been in it, like fingers had pressed through it slowly and carefully. He stood still for a long time outside his tent, eyes on the trees. He didn't sleep that night. At dawn, he packed up in silence, skipped breakfast, didn't boil water, just shoved everything into his pack, cinched it tight and got moving. Barely 5 minutes down the trail, he stopped. There, placed carefully in the middle of the path, was his missing water filter bag. Folded, clean, dry. He didn't touch it. He stepped around it and walked faster. By noon, he should have seen the old fire road, but instead he stood in a clearing that felt too unfamiliar, too wide. He scanned the trees, turned around twice, and then spotted something on a flat stone just off the trail. A protein bar. Not his brand, different wrapper. Neatly set like a gift or a warning. He turned. There was someone on the trail ahead, maybe 30 yards out. Tall, thin man, holding a beige tarp folded over one arm. His face was long, pale. His clothes were gray or tan, hard to tell in the shifting light. A folding knife was clipped to his belt. He didn't speak, didn't wave, he just stared. Philip stared back, frozen. After several seconds, the man turned and walked silently into the trees. Philip didn't follow, didn't call out. He turned and started walking the opposite direction. Fast, then faster. Off trail, through low brush, scrambling over deadfall and rocks. His legs ached, his breathing turned sharp. But he didn't stop. It wasn't until late afternoon that he stumbled onto a cracked gravel path. The same one he'd parked near. And there it was. His car. Exactly where he'd left it. He unlocked the door, threw his pack inside and sat behind the wheel, not starting the engine for a while. Just breathing. He made it out, but someone else stayed out there, someone vigilant. He never went back to that trail. Some places are not meant to be shared, he thought to himself. Nathan liked to camp twice a year. He'd pick a place far enough to be quiet, close enough to not be reckless. The Sawtooth Range was that place this time, jagged, sun-bleached cliffs, and a valley that looked like something out of a movie. No marked trails, no signal, just sky and slope. He parked at a lot, checked the weather, and started his hike. By late afternoon, he found a shelf overlooking the valley, flat enough for a tent, high enough to see for miles. The land felt dry, hard. The creek below was a silver ribbon cutting through pine. He pitched the tent 25 feet from the edge just to be safe. Cooked a quick meal, drank half a liter of water, and laid on his mat until the stars took over. He woke at 3:17 a.m. The tent felt tilted. He sat up. The zipper flapped faintly in the breeze. The ground had a soft give to it now, not wet, just looser. He poked his head out. Nothing was obviously wrong, but the fire ring had collapsed. One of the stones had rolled several feet away. The soil around the pit was darker, sunken slightly. Nathan stood up and walked toward the edge, cautiously. His foot sunk an inch into the dirt, soft. Not like last night. He got down on one knee, shined his headlamp along the ground. Hairline, fractures in the soil. A split running along the base of a few trees. Saplings leaning slightly toward the cliff. He stepped back. His tent had moved maybe a foot downhill, not blown, shifted. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, the wind picked up. He packed in 20 minutes, threw on his pack, and started back toward the ridge. No breakfast. 10 minutes in, the path he'd come up on was gone, collapsed into a steep V-shaped run of broken rock and dirt. He doubled back and started searching for another way down. By noon, the wind was steady and cold. The sky, once clear, had turned the color of dust. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he recalled a warning about dry landslides. How sometimes the ground just lets go, especially in burn areas where roots no longer anchor the earth. He hiked low, staying off inclines. Every step sent small trickles of pebbles rolling. Then he heard it. A dull, low cracking sound behind him. Not thunder, not branches, something deeper, like earth groaning. He moved faster. A switchback up the ridge revealed a long view of where he had camped. And it wasn't there. The shelf, the one he'd spent the night on, had vanished. Clean break. Gone. A 20-foot chunk of land had fallen into the valley. His boot prints, fire ring, his flattened grass, all of it just gone. He sat down, heart pounding. Not out of fear exactly, more like stunned awe. He hadn't heard it fall. It had just vanished behind him, quietly, the same way it shifted in the night, inches at a time. If he stayed one more hour, he would have been in it. He got up and kept walking. Didn't stop again until the trees thickened and the trail connected back to the forestry road. He was safe. Trevor had been hiking alone for years. Nothing ever really went wrong. Sure, a few blisters, one twisted ankle near Mount Baldy, and a night he forgot his tent poles and had to sleep under a tarp in a thunderstorm. But he knew how to stay calm, how to read a map, how to not be an idiot. That was his edge. He wasn't even planning to stay overnight this time. Just a long out-and-back loop in a part of the forest that had reopened after a fire a few years ago. He started early, parked at the new ranger gate, and began the climb up into the basin by sunrise. The air was cooler than expected. Everything around him felt brittle. Trees blackened and snapped, soil kicked into powder. Still beautiful. By mid-afternoon, he reached the plateau. a wide, open field where the trail vanished. The air felt thinner up here, and a strange silence hung over everything. No insects, no birds, just wind. He took a break under a broken tree and ate a protein bar, checked the time. If he turned back now, he'd make it to the car before dark. But something about the basin caught his attention. A narrow path, almost hidden behind collapsed trees, seemed to trail deeper into a section not on his printed map. The kind of spot you only find by accident. So, of course, he followed it. It wasn't long before he saw the clearing, and in the center, a blue tarp. Weathered, sun-bleached, held down with stones. At first, he thought it was trash. Leftover gear, something harmless. Then he saw the edge of a sleeping bag poking out from under it. He froze. There were no footprints, no gear scattered, just the bag and tarp, and the shape underneath. He called out once. Nothing. Trevor slowly approached, but something in his body said stop. Every inch of him tightened. He didn't smell anything, but he knew. You don't wrap something in a tarp in the middle of nowhere unless you don't want it found. He backed away, step by step, then turned and left. Fast. He didn't run, not at first. But when he glanced over his shoulder, he thought he saw something in the trees. A figure. Not moving. Watching. He ran. The trail back was a blur of cracked roots and sliding gravel. At some point, he slipped, tore the skin off his palm, but didn't stop. By the time he reached the place where the real trail reconnected, the sun was already dropping. Long shadows, cold wind. He didn't stop moving until he saw the ranger gate. But the gate was locked. The road was empty. No tire tracks, no ranger trucks, no one. He checked his phone, no signal. He pounded on the gate once, then stopped. Something didn't feel right. The lock on the gate wasn't a park lock. It was new. Clean, like someone had just put it there. Trevor backed away. He didn't wait. He cut off the road, back into the trees, following the road parallel from within the forest line. Trying to find a way around, a gap, a break. Somewhere behind him, he thought he heard something metal clink. He didn't look back. He didn't sleep that night, just kept walking. By morning, he finally hit a dirt service road. It led him to a junction, then a paved road, then a cell signal. He didn't report anything. Not to the park office, not to the sheriff. He drove home with the windows open and the radio off. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, playing the day back in his mind. The clearing, the tarp, the figure in the trees. He knew that if someone had dumped a body up there, it wouldn't stay hidden forever. But the lock on the gate? That was new. Too new. It made the whole thing feel less like a tragedy, and more like a setup. The next morning, Trevor sat at his kitchen table for a long time, sipping cold coffee and staring at nothing. Then he pulled up the number for the state police and made the call. Not local. He didn't trust that. Not after the gate. He gave them the GPS coordinates, described the trail, the tarp, the figure, the clean lock, every detail. They listened longer than he expected, asked him to repeat some things, asked if he'd touched anything. 3 days later, they called him back. They'd found the tarp. They wouldn't say much, just that his instincts were right to leave when he did. The Basin Trail was now officially restricted, not for maintenance or fire damage, but for an active investigation. They wouldn't tell him what else they found. But Trevor didn't need to know. He had already seen enough. Thank you for watching and listening. See you soon with more stories. Till then, stay well and stay safe.